Trapped in Austin podcast.
Have you back on, man. I don't know if you remember when we talked then, like, because I think we corresponded via email a few times after the interview, but like a bunch of the audio in that interview kind of got thrashed, and it was a really good interview. It kind of sucks that wasn't able to get it recorded. Yeah. I think it was because like I was using, that app through Anchor, and there's all these variables where like if one person's on Wi-Fi and the other person's not, it can just cause like a lag in the audio. So I just kind of resorted to like, I'll just call people directly and just record it that way. And it's been a lot more seamless as far as doing the podcast. So it's been a lot easier. Yeah, dude, what's kind of been up the last couple of years? I hate to ask such a broad question, but like how, I guess before we dive into that, if you want to just anybody new who's kind of listening to this who may not be kind of familiar with your show, I know this probably gets a little monotonous after a while, but if you want to just give like a quick overview about Night Owl, and then we can kind of just like talk to sort of like what's been going on the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I started the show to kind of create what I wanted in a paranormal show, is that something that's a little bit more journalistic and doesn't really go for the ghost hunting aspect of what most paranormal shows go for. And so what I created was an audio podcast that is sort of a series-based podcast that focuses on haunted locations that are not your typical, like what you would expect or what you would know to be haunted in your city as a haunted location. And I wanted to do deep dives into those places from a journalist perspective. And I kind of take you there myself, and you're hearing the live audio of the venue or the establishment, and I'm interviewing individuals who have had personal experiences. So that way, my goal was to avoid hearsay or secondhand account stories, which a lot of paranormal shows do, and did in the past. So when I created this in 2017, I wanted something that was definitely more engaging and first-person perspective and journalistic, so you can go along sort of like you're listening to a mini-series documentary on a haunted location.
Yeah. No, have you always done I was looking at your catalog on Spotify before we hopped in the phone. Have you always kind of done it that way, where you kind of broke it down? Like, I guess where you did kind of like a series, but it stayed on the same location for like 2 or 3 episodes. Like, have you always kind of done it that way, or is that sort of a newer way you've been approaching it?
No, it's been that way from the get-go.
Okay.
I mean, my first ever episode was it was me finding my footing, and it was the only episode that was a single episode that focused on the location, and that was Royal Legion Tattoo. But in theory, it really wasn't, because if you listen to the end of that season, episode 12, we were called back to the Spider House, which is where we were going originally, and that was the same property as the tattoo parlor, and there was hauntings that was tied to both the Spider House and it, so it kind of turned into a 2-part series in unexpectedly. So kind of every single case at every location has always been a 2-part to 3-part series. Sometimes it's pushed up to 4, but we typically land in the 2 to 3-part episode series.
Yeah, it's legit.
Now, we do have, I'll clarify this, we did for a little while, and they're going to be coming back. It's just been hard for me to manage the show myself. But we're trying to bring back what are called campfire episodes. Now, those are like just straight up ghost stories. A collection, or it's one really long ghost story told by multiple people that were involved in the experience. So it's always an in-depth collected ghost story or series of ghost stories that sort of tie together, like they have a similar theme. And those are also told from the people that had those experiences. And I go really deep into my interview process, and it's just them telling the story as if they were sitting by a campfire and you're hearing a ghost story.
Yeah. So just to sort of refresh my memory a little bit, you are just an audio-only platform, right? Do you have any video content on YouTube or anything, or you just still kind of doing audio-only stuff?
Yeah, currently, and from the get-go, we've always been just an audio format only. There is possibility in the future that we might, but with the bandwidth of the workload of the type of show I've created, it is so much work just to do audio. I can't fathom adding video to the mix.
Yeah.
But it's a dream eventually that maybe we could produce something like this. It would be more like a television show style approach, because it's very for the style of the show to match the style of the the audio, it would be, my goal has always been to make it feel a little bit cinematic and has those kind of story arcs. So I wouldn't think we could do something just like with a single camera following us very roughly. It would be kind of more produced really well and showing all the aspects of the case.
Yeah. No, it's interesting to hear you say that, man. I still I'm still doing audio only, and a lot of it is just like bandwidth, it's like I would love to be able to like have a studio and sit down to talk to people face to face. The problem is there's a lot of facets there. It's like I don't really have, it's like, who am I, right? Like I don't have the social equity really to like tell someone like, hey, I know you don't know me, take an hour and a half out of your life to come drive to this location and just randomly sit down and talk to me. Like a lot of people, it's already hard as it is, dude, having a guest-based show like what I have and trying to get people to just even talk on the phone. So I couldn't imagine the obstacles and the hurdles involved in like trying to get people to sit down face to face. So, yeah, but ultimately, yeah, I would love to be able to do this on video one day, because it almost kind of seems like one of those, it just seems almost like inevitable. It's like everything is like going to YouTube now. And I love audio-based stuff, but I kind of feel like it almost seems, and I want to get your thoughts on this too, but it almost seems like everything is just like, if you don't have the visual presentation, if you don't have things clipped up for social media, it's almost kind of, it's working against you in some way. But I still love doing audio-based stuff, and it's just a lot more streamlined. It's like you and I can talk for 20 or 30 minutes over the phone. Boom, I have an episode. And it's not like neither one of us really it's low stakes, you know what I mean? Like we don't have to drive anywhere or take time out of our busy lives. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of curious about your thoughts on all that and how everything is kind of shifting in the culture these days as far as podcasting.
Yeah, well, I'll speak to what you just said. Like it's really hard to get someone to like take that time out of their schedule. I think the pandemic really kind of did a lot of things to our culture as far as like things are a little bit easier to pass on, or it's been a challenge for me in particular to get locations now because there's no follow through and there's no responses. I'll find a location and the owners will be like, yes, we want to be featured. Thank you. Here's the contact. I've reached out and 16 texts, no responses. I can't get anyone to agree to allow me just to come and just do a 10-minute interview. It's like the culture has just shifted to where we're struggling to have commitments. We work from home a lot. People don't want to make those extra commitments now. And
yeah.
So I've been noticing it's been challenging. So add the layer of filmmaking on top of that. It's like without paying someone to do that, it's going to be like really impossible to do that and produce something that's like focused like that. We're doing sort of journalistic work, and we're just hoping to feature places and feature people and tell their stories and get their stories out there. But in a way, it's like commitment levels have dropped. So it's really tough to do that when, podcasts don't really pay hardly at all. And so we can't be paying guests to be featured. It's like we're going to showcase and promote these venues or these events or these people and their crafts, but we can't get them to even want to do that sometimes because it's just the culture has shifted where it's kind of low commitment and they can bail out of things pretty easily. And I'm in the same boat. I grew really comfortable in my solitude and my sheltering, in my home, and feeling like now I don't want to go out a lot. If people invite me out to parties and events, I'm kind of like, I'd rather stay home.
Yeah,
so
I'm the same way,
it's
dude.
part of the culture, but it does make it challenging for people in our field for sure.
Yeah, and one of the things you touched on that I wanted to kind of elaborate on a little bit was, you would think, right? Like when you hit the zoom out button, like let's say you own a business, it's like, yeah, we may not have the money to pay you to come do the show, but it's like indirectly, this is free advertisement for you. Like take advantage of it. You know what I'm saying? But I just think some people have a really hard time hitting the zoom out button sometimes and looking at things from a macro level, and everyone is so micro. I've noticed sometimes they're not thinking like, hey dude, even if like 50 people listen to this, that's 50 more people who didn't know about your story, or like, I think it's inadvertently it's working for you, but some people just don't think of it that way, or they look at it as like, maybe they don't really want the exposure. sometimes I have to remind myself too, is some people don't really want the exposure, you know? Like you'd think that a lot of people, especially maybe in our age demographic, it's like people kind of want the attention, but then some people you have to realize that there are the few out there that are kind of like, I don't really want to be on a podcast, or I don't really want to talk on video or talk on camera or audio, whatever. You know, some people just don't want the exposure, I think. I don't know. It's been a hurdle for me too the last year or so. Talk to me a little bit what's been up the last couple of years, man. I know that's broad, but I've seen you've been putting a lot of content out. How have things been with the show?
Yeah, I can't remember when we did our previous interview where I was at. I can't remember because it's been a while, and then I got really busy with getting the show back up. But for a while, the pandemic happened. I also, and people know this because I had to announce to the following, because we have a pretty large following, I had a personal tragedy that I had to kind of get through. It was a tough thing in my life. So there was a lot that really stopped the show. It was the pandemic. I couldn't go out and do cases anymore. We had to try to make a shift and do something like with phone calls instead of in-person interviews, things like that. But then even then I couldn't travel to the locations as easily as I used to because of the pandemic. And that was where we were, I think, around the time that we talked. I got cases going again, and I was taking them. They were a lot slower moving because we didn't have that freedom, and we had these, we had to be aware and cautious around the pandemic time. So I slowly built up a new season, and it came out this year. So we just this month marks the end of our new season and the start of our new season, our second season post-pandemic. So that's what we've been doing. I've been shifting, growing, changing the way we approach the show, and then also looking at ways to improve it and grow it. I think the things that I'm excited about is changing. We're going to be making some changes and growing, and we're expanding outside of Austin even further now, and we're going to be exploring different sites in Texas. We're also going to be doing live events again, which really was something the fan base and myself truly loved and enjoyed, because we got to get together as a community, the spooky community. Yeah. And I miss that. We haven't done that since pre-pandemic, which is insane. It's been such a long time. And so we're going to start doing those. They're starting off smaller. Like, I used to do these massive events at the haunted establishments or venues that were like large-scale events with full-on spooky vendor markets and live music and live storytelling. Sometimes we had drive-in horror movies. It was big. I'm starting off a little smaller by tackling something I've been wanting to tackle for a long time, and I'm going to be producing and making them as regular offerings is these things called haunted evenings. And there'll be haunted evenings at blank, like one of the venues that we had. So haunted evenings at the Tavern or haunted evenings at the Clay Pit. And they're 3-hour-long, in-depth, small group experiences at these venues with myself and occasionally some other team members there. But I will always be there giving the tours personally. And we do dinner, drinks, hang out. We have reserved spaces at these venues. And then we also do small group investigations of hotspots that are off limits to the public. And that's a 3-hour experience. And those are going to be coming out this month, next month, and they're rolling out monthly. And we're just going to do them very exclusively, just like once a month for a very small group of people.
Yeah. Does this correlate with, I saw you post some stuff recently where you were at the Tavern with a group of folks. Is this what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's exactly it. We piloted it with that group because that group was very excited about what we were talking about. We announced that we were going to come out these evenings. My schedule was so busy that I didn't hit my deadline to make them happen. But this group of women who are going to try to do not your usual bachelorette party. They were all spooky friends. Mm-hmm. And the bride-to-be was a super fan of all things spooky. She's getting married on Friday the 13th in October. And she loves the show. So they all kind of worked together to make this happen. They basically they kind of kept begging me, like, can you make this happen even though it's not ready? I said, well, you know what? You're pushing me to do this, and it's going to be my pilot, and I'll feel very good if it goes well. Yeah. I don't mind that it's just a pilot, and they said, yeah, we don't care if it's you're still ironing out the kinks and things. And so I said, okay, if you don't mind that, we'll do it. We did it, and I'm so glad they kind of forced me to push myself and do it, because I would have been stayed tweaking it longer and longer because I wasn't sure how it was going to go. Well, it went incredibly well, and we all felt incredible about the event. So now we're launching them because we're ready to go. They turned out really well.
Dope, man. So how many people are typically like were in the group when you? That
was a private event, so it was a very small group. It was only like up to 10 people max.
Yeah.
But we're looking at it's still going to be small, but we're looking to move that up to like the 20 people range for the tavern, and in that same vicinity for the clay pit, because we've already got the clay pit on board as well. And then we're going to be moving and reaching out based on this model and showing the success of it to other venues, hopefully things like Buenos Aires Cafe. We've also got other things that are restaurant bars are perfect for this type of evening. And there's a really nice restaurant that we featured called Maddie's at Green Pastures. Really, really love those venues and places, and maybe we can do these on a occasional basis where it's not too much demand on the venues or us, because it's only like once every so often. But they're very premier events and very exclusive. So, they do cost more than your average ghost tour because they're more in-depth and involved.
Yeah.
But for fans of the show and people that are really paranormal enthusiasts that care about this stuff more so than just going for kind of a cheesy, corny scare, we're doing a lot more as far as offering the history, but also really focusing on really quality storytelling like the show does, but also giving them an experience that they'll remember. And they can be there for a lot longer than just a passing 10 or 15 minutes. In a walking tour type thing.
Cool, man. What are you doing the next one? Do you have one in the books already?
We've got it going, but we haven't got it in the books yet. But we're looking at Clay Pit for October.
Okay, cool.
Now, we also have another possibility for also the tavern in October, and it might be on Halloween night. So I'm not making any promises, but that's what we're aiming for. But we don't know yet. The availability of the venue is always tricky. Each venue is unique, and they have a lot of things going on. So we've put those dates in, and we're waiting on a response. And then we're going to have a full annual calendar come out soon once we can get all the dates locked in, so you can in advance book these. But right now it's just beginning, so we're trying to lock in the original calendar for the year.
Very cool, man. So for example, like if you do, the event at like the tavern, are you guys kind of doing sort of a recount of like what happened at the tavern, kind of like stuff maybe you did on the tavern episode, and you kind of guys look at different areas inside the tavern where some of the, encounters were kind of anecdotally happened? Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It kind of starts off with like, we have a reserved space in each of these places, and typically the reserved space is near some of the most active spots, right? Like in the clay pit, we're going to have the basement, the cellar. And at the tavern, it's upstairs right by the attic stairway. We have the whole right side of the upstairs, which is called the game room, so that doesn't sound scary. But that's where a lot of activities occurred. That's where, the spirits have been seen moving around, shadow figures in the windows up there. And then that's the attic doorway is literally right there where a lot of horrible things have been reported and scary things. And then we actually get to do like, it's a meet and greet and hangout. So that's a lot of like personal interaction and talking and asking questions that you might have wanted to know about the case that you can ask me and any other team members that are there. And we kind of get to give you a little bit more behind the scenes of what happened. But we also then, after having drinks and dinner and just kind of getting to know everybody, so it becomes very like casual and intimate, where we can actually get to know each other and not be some like strangers to each other. We then spend about an hour doing the full tour. We'll move downstairs and start outside and talk about the history of the building and the land. And then we move into the building and then point out, like I said, like you were mentioning, all the activity that was reported from staff when we visited the place, and then updates if there's any updates from current staff. And then as we move through the building and finalize everything, we conclude how our investigation either validated some of those findings. And I kind of do it in a really heavy story format, where I kind of bring everything around from the circle and relate things that happened to myself and my team members personally. And there's always a lot of personal anecdotes that I didn't include in the episodes that we reveal in person there. And some of those are actually very terrifying, especially one at the tavern. And there's also more at the clay pit that I have. And it was so scary when I did this pilot at the tavern. I do it right before we go, and before we have access to go to the attic, which is where there's really some scary stuff that's been documented up there. And as I told the personal thing that happened to me that I didn't reveal in the show, the party actually did not want to go into the attic after that.
Wow.
And I was like, y'all paid for this. This is a great experience. And finally they're like, yeah, we'll do it. I'm really scared. So there's a lot of things that elevate the experience to where you can actually enjoy it and really start to feel the experience. And you're there long enough to also feel like you can possibly have your own experience. A lot of tours, you know, they're kind of quick. They go right through the spaces. They tell the stories. But we do a lot of personal related incidents and accounts, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's wild, man. I bet it's pretty cool being able to like meet fans too.
It's fun. I mean, the community is great. Like, that's the thing. It's like the fan base and the followers are the people that I was trying to connect with. Like, when I created the show, I was really not happy with. I love the paranormal, but all that's out there, I don't really get into some of the more, you know, the tactics of paranormal ghost hunting and paranormal research is gadget based and things like that. And it becomes about like trying to actually hunt ghosts, which I've always just been more fascinated in their stories. So I was like, well, let me see if I can create a show that documents the stories of those that have had experiences, but also the stories of the undead, the people that are still trying to get their story across, possibly. Because I don't know, you know, we never know if this is real. I still question it. But it's like, these are really fascinating stories. And if it is true and the validations that we make are very, very intriguing, and the historical references that tie to things that we get, it's like, this could be someone who really wants to get their story across, and we're trying to do that for them. And the community is a community that's just like that. They're like-minded with me, knowing like, hey, I really appreciate this approach. Like, I like this because this is what I want in a paranormal research show. So that's kind of why doing things with the people that love the show and fans and followers, I get to meet those people and we get to connect, and I get to hear how they found the show. What's their favorite episode? What's the moment that scared them the most? And then they ask me the same question. I'm like, yeah, I'll tell you the time I was most scared during the show. You ready for it? And they're like, yeah. So it's pretty cool to share those personal experiences with the people that support the show.
That's awesome, man. Have you had anybody like fly in from a different state? Like, that? Okay, that's really cool, dude.
Yeah, like we used to do before the pandemic. We had at Pioneer Farms, that really incredible site. We still do things there. We're going to continue to do things there. We just took a little break because it's a hard venue to work at because it's so massive. But it's a 90-acre farm with over 12 haunted sites on it, and there's a specific site that's former Tonkawa Native American encampment, and they've kept it really preserved, and then they've also like set up some more modern day built replica teepees and things like that. Well, we got to do campouts out there, and that's where a lot of sightings occur. And we had people fly from California, Oklahoma. I remember that was a really crazy. Well, actually, because we might have been doing that during I can't remember if it was during the pandemic, because it was a camp out. It was safe. That's what it was. We did do that like right at the start of the pandemic, and we did them outdoors, and they drove from California and Oklahoma, which was crazy.
Wow.
But in the new post I did of these tavern post that I did of these haunted evenings, there's so many people in the comments saying that they're going to fly down to Texas.
I saw that. I think that's what kind of inspired me to want to ask you about it, because I think that's dope, man, that you get that kind of support from other parts of the country.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of building a community that is like-minded, and whenever for what I did, I just knew what I wanted. I wanted something in a paranormal show that didn't exist at the time, and I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and create that because it's what I want. And I didn't expect it to get a following like this. But whenever you do that, if you're doing anything creatively, or non-creatively too, just something that you're creating and producing, if you do that in a way that's like considering, hey, there's a gap here, I want to do something that and you also have a passion for it, I feel like naturally you're going to feel a gap that then all these people, you're the only source for. So they're gonna really rally behind you and be like, I don't want this to stop. I really wanted something like this for a long time, and I want to keep it going. So we have an incredible Patreon support system. Every time I put out merch, it sells out. I do pre-orders, and they sell out. I do live events and these haunted evening type things, and when I sell the tickets, they sell really fast and they sell out. So it's like, this is awesome. Like, this is what I wasn't dreaming of this. I just wanted to create a show that was hitting the marks that I wanted to hit, and then all of a sudden I realized, okay, I did something that others wanted too, and that's cool, and I can maybe do this and work toward making this a future career possibly. That's still not happened, but it's definitely on its way there.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I wanted to ask you about Pioneer Farms, actually. You had mentioned that. I think, and I could be butchering this, but I think when we talked a couple years ago, do you do some kind of Halloween series or something in October out there on a regular basis, or was that just kind of a one thing, like a one-time thing you did a certain year? Or am I getting this wrong?
We used to do a regular called Free Range Spirits event, and that was always fun. The pandemic really hurt us. We also had some struggles with just the event logistics, and we just had to figure out a way to put a pause on them. We did a Free Range Spirits, which typically what those entail, any type of live event that I would host was typically a large vendor market with a lot of like artists, crafts, people that make things that are somewhat in the spooky realm, right? And I have a lot of friends in the spooky community. You know, shout out to my friend and team member Alexis at City Alchemist. We've also got like Joey at the Glass Coffin, a Vampire Parlor. You know, tons of people in the paranormal community as well. We all kind of rally when we do these events, and all the vendors come out and support and set up booths. And you know, I support them by hosting the event. They come out and make the markets great. So that's kind of what one of the events was like. And we used to do that at Pioneer Farms. And then the other aspects to those events was kind of like the main event part of that was the live ghost stories. So I took the concept of like our campfire episodes, how I gather really good personal ghost stories, and I record them and edit them in a campfire episode. Well, we just kind of do that, but a version of that is it's live. People are on the stage retelling this really eerie ghost story that happened to them. And I try to vet them and find the best ones locally. That's always a challenge. So that's why some of the events have slowed down, because it's like, it's hard to find really good stories. And then some of the stories can be great, but these people are like, I'm not great on stage, or I can't get on stage, I'm too nervous. So it's like a really challenging thing. So this is putting it out there, folks. If you do have a really good ghost story and you're comfortable on stage, I workshop them with you, and I help you get to a place where you're comfortable too. I have a lot of tools and resources, and then we spend some time workshopping it. I am going to start bringing these events back. So if there's anybody out there listening that has a really good ghost story, or you know someone that does and wouldn't mind being on stage telling that story at a really cool live event, I'm looking for ghost stories like that so we can bring back these cool events.
Yeah, that's dope, man. Give people your contact info, man, if they want to get in touch with you, your Night Owl email address, and if they want to reach out to you on Instagram.
Yeah. Our social media, mostly just Instagram and Facebook. I'm on Instagram more than anything else. That's at the Night Owl Podcast. And if you want to email me, it's thenightowlpodcast@gmail.com. And everything you can access to, all this information is on our website, thenightowlpodcast.com.
Dude, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because I remember this really well. So, like, I know that I don't know if you remember this conversation or not, but we talked a lot about horror movies a little bit on our last interview. And you definitely put me on game, dude. Like, I remember you told me about Dario Argento, and does this ring a bell at all? Because you're a Dario.
I do like Dario Argento.
Yeah.
But I don't even remember talking about it.
No, it's all good, dude. I just remember it because, like, I remember we were talking about horror films, and I thought, like, I knew a decent amount about horror films, but then you were just listing off stuff that I'd never heard of before, and I love horror movies. So, like, the last couple years, dude, since we've spoke, I've really done my due diligence and done my homework, and I've watched, like, all the Dario Argento films now. I've watched some of Lucio Fulci's stuff, if I'm saying his name correctly.
Yeah.
I've watched also a movie you told me about, dude, that I really liked was The Changeling.
Yeah, The Changeling, yes.
The Changeling. Yeah, I can't. How do you say it again?
It's just The Changeling.
Changeling. Yeah, you told me about that film, and I got a chance to watch it. Also, another movie I want to run by you, dude, that I watched not that long ago that is also super really fucked up. But have you ever seen Possession?
Yes.
Yeah, that movie's wild, dude.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about You're talking about the older.
Yeah, the one with
right? Okay.
the one with Sam Neill in it.
Yes.
Where his wife's possessed. Yeah, I was watching that movie and I was kind of like, my God, man, I cannot believe this came out in like 1980. Like that movie was just so. It reminded me a lot of like that feeling when I still get this feeling sometimes when I watch it, but like when you watch like the first Exorcist movie, it's just kind of that unsettling, disconcerting feeling. Like I definitely had that the entire time I was watching Possession, and I was just like, this movie's like kind of before its time, dude. And I just love how like a lot of those horror films from the 70s and 80s, it's like there's no CGI really. And so I just think that adds to the effect of like, they're using they're using like either like robotics or they're using like really advanced like, I guess like puppets like to make a lot of the imaging. And it's just like, to me, that makes it way scarier than watching something that's like super computerized.
Yeah, for sure, man. I still, to this day, I kind of just always revert back to the, 70s and 80s horror are some of my favorite. That's my favorite decades, those two, and I can't stop going back to them. I try to watch a lot of newer stuff, and I struggle with it. So I have a huge collection. I have over 350 DVDs and Blu-rays of the horror genre here just at home, and I do a lot of outdoor screenings. I have a big outdoor screen that a buddy of mine and a member of the show, Bo, built. He does woodwork for a lot of the bars. He actually constructed the whole new We Love video. All that work in there.
Dope place, by the way. I just went there for the first time a few weeks ago, and I loved it.
So he built that screening room out. He built all the shelving, anything inside there. He built. Well, he's my good friend, and he a long time ago was like needing to store an RV thing here at my yard, and he's like, I'll build you anything you want. I go, I really want an outdoor screen. He's like, I can build those. So he built one out of 2x4s and wood and a big old flat piece of plywood, and we painted it. It looks really great, and have fire pits. And I'm waiting for this temperature to drop so I can start horror movie nights in the backyard again.
He's sick.
But yeah, all I do is pull from my collection, and we just watch old films all the time. Now that we have We Love Video, though, we can go and get stuff that I don't have.
I know, man. That place, when I walked in there, it was just like, because my mom used to take me there when I was a kid to the old I Love Video.
Yeah.
And it's just dope, man. Like walking in there and just seeing like old movie posters, and I loved the screening room in the back. It was very nostalgic being in there, which I'm so glad that place is open, dude. And I hope it lasts. I hope that place gets...
So go, listeners, go and support them. It's a membership-based. What they've done is they've changed the model of the video store because, let's just face it, the reason video stores closed is because that model was just outdated. Like, we have streaming services now that we pay a single fee for, and we can watch whatever we want. They've done a similar thing there for movie rentals, so you can literally choose the level you want to be at, and you just keep renting movies and taking them back. There's a longer time period between when you have to bring them back. They're very relaxed there, which is very kind because some people have to drive very far, to get to the video store. I live far south. They're far north. And it allows me to just pay a certain monthly fee, just like I would pay for streaming. But anytime I go in there, I just swap out my movie and just go. It's really easy. You can do it where you can swap out. If you're a high watcher and you watch a lot, you can do it like 3 movies at a time or 5 movies at a time based on your tier that you're paying per month.
Yeah.
So go support them because as horror fans, you and I know this. We don't want that to go away.
No.
I was really sad when we lost the video store.
No, man. Some of my best memories growing up are just like, walking through video rental store, 10, 11, 12 years old. And it's like I immediately just beeline it for the horror section. And I'm renting like, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 or something. Like I'm renting the most random shit, and I didn't even care about... I like action movies, obviously. I like all kinds of films, but I just always, preferred horror, and that was always kind of what I leaned towards. But yeah, dude, there's something about just renting like an old 80s horror film from a movie store that I hope never disappears. And thank God that entity still exists, man, in some capacity, because, that would be a shame, dude.
Absolutely.
What else? You got any other recommendations for me, man? I wanted to ask you while you were on. I know, I think you told me, I think we talked about Tenebrae specifically because you really like that movie, I think, right?
I don't know if I said that because I don't remember if I really liked that one.
Oh, really? Dude, you told me. I thought it was Tenebrae that you recommended to me. So what are like your two favorite Dario films, if you even have two, like if you can narrow?
Dario is not really, I mean, I like it's hard to describe why there's something about this, it's hit or miss with me with Dario, but I really like, Suspiria has always been phenomenal. You know what I mean?
It's a great film.
But I like Italian horror cinema, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's a lot that I have odd eclectic taste. I appreciate all the things coming from different subgenres and things like that. But if like we're talking like, I don't know, it's almost like I have to narrow down like the subgenre of what we're talking about to know. Like I love, if you're talking about ghost story movies, like paranormal stuff, you know, I have my favorites in there. But I also like, I think, and this is very cliche, but I've always, one of my favorite all-time directors of horror is John Carpenter, and I have a very deep-rooted love for his horror films, and I watch those pretty religiously every year.
What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite John Carpenter film?
It's the one that most people, it is their favorite, but I did a thing where it has a horror movie test, and it's really long because I wanted to know what my number one was, and it pits all your tops against each other, and you have to make a choice.
Oh, wow.
It kind of goes through the subgenres, and the one that came out on top for my favorite horror film was The Thing, and it was very accurate because I love The Thing.
Yeah.
I just did not realize that it was my number one. But based on the test, that's what came out, and sure enough, it's a John Carpenter film, you know. So
yeah. That's dope, man. I just had this epiphany as we were talking to what I think prompted the Dario Argento conversation is we were talking about horror films and we started talking about slashers in particular. And I think you kind of just told me like, you know, hey, have you ever, you know, check out some Dario Argento stuff. I think maybe The Deep Red came up in the conversation. There was a few Dario Argento films that came up. And I think you had maybe referenced one other Italian horror director. It might have been, was it Brava or was it?
There was Brava, and I can't remember. I can't remember if it's Italian, but I have to mention I love this movie. But let me see if I can find it real quick.
Yeah, man. Just you know, for people that are listening, I'd love to just hear like 4 or 5 films that you really like, or you know, maybe just some recommendations for people because Again, I know you don't remember the conversation, dude, but I remember like you really put me on game because I've watched a lot of older stuff the last couple of years that I never even, you know, knew about, you know, because it's like.
I'll go through a couple. Okay, let me see. I'll kind of hit like the various subgenres, and I'm not like, it's been a while since I used to study film, so that's why I have a passion for it, but my focuses have gone sort of away from the studies, so I don't remember I'm not as good as remembering those details like I used to be, but
yeah, it's all
as
good.
far as some favorite films of mine in the horror genre, so zombies is a huge thing. I love zombie movies, and it's something that these are the ones that kind of go a little bit under the radar, so I'll try to kind of hit on those. A sleeper hit for me that I love, and I watch it almost every year, and I'm actually itching to watch it this year, so I'm going to probably pop it in the backyard screening soon, is a film called, it's got 2 names, Let Sleeping Corpses Lie or The Living Dead of Manchester Morgue. It is a really good zombie movie. It feels like, it's like Dawn of the Dead, original Romero stuff.
Okay.
But it takes place in like the countryside in Italy, I believe. And it's just cool. It kind of feels like the Italian horror atmosphere, but it's very Romero-esque, and I just love that film so much. Check it out; it's really cool if you like zombie movies.
What? Give me the second one. You said that what manner?
It's either Let Sleeping Corpses Lie or Living Dead of Manchester Morgue.
Oh, okay. I'm writing that down.
If you go into like the horror, the paranormal genre, It's tough for me because I already told you The Changeling is like one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, and that was a
If you
great
go-
film, dude.
Yeah, if you go into it's sort of in that vein. There is a movie from what's it? Is it from the 70s or 80s? I think it's from the 80s. It's called Ghost Story. It's really good.
Okay.
And it's got a great cast. It is from 1981, and it's got Fred Astaire. It's got really, really cool cast, and they're all like these older men kind of in this really cold, snowy snowstorm setting, and they're all sort of haunted by something from the past. It's really cool. I would recommend that one if you like paranormal horror flicks.
Dope, man. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. One of the things I was thinking about a lot, like the last couple of years when I was watching a lot of these Italian horror films, is I was like, I don't know what it was about, like, when I was a kid, let's say early 90s, obviously, like, this predates, like, internet, at least on a large consumer scale. So it's like, I don't know if it's interesting to me how I sort of, like, kind of skipped over the genre as a kid, because I was really into horror films, but I think, when you're a kid, you're impressionable, so it's like you're always thinking like Freddy Krueger, you're thinking Jason, Michael Myers. So when you go to the video store, at least for me in my experience, I was just going for the stuff that was kind of like hearsay, right?
Yeah.
No one, when I was 12 years old, was going like, go check out Dario Argento, So I think it's like, what's interesting about, and it is interesting kind of looking back in retrospect, you go, holy shit, man, like the horror genre was so much more vast than I realized. Like, as an adult going back and looking, you're like, these movies were around when I was a kid, and I literally had no clue. And they blow everything that was American at the time kind of out of the water, arguably. And the gore is like 10x worse. And I'm like, dude, I wish I would have had the opportunity to check these out a lot sooner, but I just wasn't privy to it,
I know. And there's so much out there. I mean, there's so many genres. I mean, there's so many subgenres and subcategories that you can kind of go down the rabbit hole and decide what you want to focus on. I love them all. I have some of my favorites, and creature features are a big thing for me too. I really love creature features. I love things with demons. Like it ranges from, Umberto Bava was one of the ones that I told you about who did Demons in 1985.
Yeah, I watched that about a year ago. I liked it.
And then Demons 2 is really great. You also have a movie from the 80s called Night of the Demons, which is a lot of fun. I love those type of movies. And then jumping to the 90s, one of my all-time favorite demon movies is Demon Knight, Knight, with, it's like the Tales from the Crypt movie.
It had Dennis Miller in it.
Billy Zane, yeah. I love that movie so much. It was just like, that's when the genre was a lot of fun. And had unique concepts and just had a lot of fun with it.
There was a lot of like funny satirical horror stuff in the 90s, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. And even the 80s. The 80s were very, like, it was a very fun genre to be in, to be doing horror at that time as well. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, like, for like vampire movies, there's not a whole lot that, like, that's kind of one of those genres that's like, it's a little bit more narrow, I feel like.
Were you a Lost Boys fan? Because I was a huge Lost Boys fan.
That's my number one.
Yeah,
every time I say it, though, it's very common, so a lot of people know it.
Yeah.
But Lost Boys is my favorite. That's the one I grew up with a huge...
Same. Very much so.
That movie. So that one is still to this day.
Dear to my heart.
Fright Night is one of my favorites as well.
Good one.
And then Near Dark is a little bit less known, but I love Near Dark as well if you haven't seen that.
Yeah, I actually just watched that for the first time about a year ago.
Yeah.
And that was kind of another one of those films too, dude. It kind of, I think it's because it came out, if I'm not mistaken, I think it came out the same year as The Lost Boys, and it kind of fell under the radar a little bit at the time.
Yeah.
That was one of those films that got popular like way later on.
Yeah.
So, but Near Dark was cool. It was on Shudder for a while, man, and that's kind of how I got a chance to check it out. Yeah, dude. It's funny, man, because like when I was growing up, and even, you know, I would argue even like 15 years ago, it was like a lot of people still, like nobody really talked about the Lost Boys, but now, because I feel like it's kind of been resurrected a little bit, and now I feel like it's kind of in that cult hit. You could put it in that kind of bucket if you wanted to. A lot more people like it more, and it's kind of more trendy. But for a long time, dude, most of my life, like nobody really talked about that movie, to be fair.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how it transitioned like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many other films that I love. I just can't think of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have so many in my collection, but
Yeah, dude. I always enjoy talking to you, man, about horror films because you definitely, like I said, you kind of helped broaden my horizon a little bit when we talked last time.
Another director to look into, if I didn't mention him, is he's done a lot, especially with the kind of the Lovecraftian horror. Is Stuart Gordon.
Okay.
You might really enjoy some of Stuart Gordon's work. Worked a lot with Jeffrey Combs, that actor, and really focused a lot on like that Lovecraft theme, Cthulhu and things like that, and alternate dimensions, things like that. Really cool director from the 80s.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely look him up and see. Well, yeah, dude. No, man, it was good talking to you again. Is there anything else you kind of want to touch on or go over? Or anything new maybe you want to...
No, just, I mean, I guess...
Are you working on a new season right now, or have you already recorded it? Is it backlogged, like you have it ready to go, or you...
Right now, we're in the middle of this brand new season following our comeback season from the pandemic shutdown. And we are struggling a little bit to get cases. I do have a lot of haunted locations that I know have stories and have expressed wanting us to come and do this, but it has become challenging to lock them in and actually get them to commit or tell stories. So I'm having to look for alternative locations so I can keep the season going. And it's really challenging when I'm on cases while I'm editing other cases. So I'd love to try to get ahead. So if anyone out there has a personal ghost story that wants to be on a campfire, or if you know or own locations that are haunted and would want to participate in the series, reach out to me. The contact info that I shared with earlier. Yeah,
absolutely, man. Dude, that's actually one thing I was going to ask you. I'm glad we kind of brought this up really quick. Is how do you traditionally get your leads for this stuff? Like, I'm sure. I mean, obviously, your podcast at this point has gained enough following where you probably get some people that reach out. But is it kind of a mix, or like I'm sure in the beginning it might have been you kind of fielding out a lot of like leads, but how do you traditionally find your cases?
Yeah, it definitely is a mix. It's a mix between like people have reached out because they've heard of the show and they give me like a lead, like, hey, I heard this place has a lot of stories, and that's sort of like a common thing. Then I'll pursue that and ask the owners, hey, is this something true, and would you mind being featured? And that's where I go from there. Sometimes the venues themselves will reach out, and that's great because that saves the extra step. Yeah. And then sometimes I'm just doing the work and just saying, I've heard about things through the grapevine or just in the lore of the town. I've heard that this place has ghosts. I'm curious if there's any truth to those rumors, and I'll reach out to the venues. We also have a form submission online, and I get a lot of stuff through there, but those are, sadly, a lot of them coming through are just people that say, hey, I heard this place is haunted. And those are harder because then I don't have a contact, to reach out to the venue. So those take more work, and I have to sometimes vet those and be like, well, is it worth throwing all my eggs in that basket when I don't know if it's going to amount to us being able to do a case there yet? So I'll try to get the ones that are like, I'm a manager at this location, and we do have this, and we'd be willing to share. And that's kind of easier for me to kind of then dive in. So looking for those type of submissions, we do have a form submission on our site, and you can fill that out for either a personal ghost story or a location that's haunted. And we do personal cases when it's important. Like if a family is suffering from a haunting and they're really uncomfortable in their home, we have done several cases like that. So if you have something like that you need help with, you can submit a form as well.
Dude, I saw you had one of those cases this past season.
Jeez,
and I'm planning on going back and listening to that tonight because I have not had a chance to check that one out yet. So I'm looking forward to that.
If you haven't, and listeners, if anyone's new, doesn't know the Night Owl podcast, and you want to, I recommend starting from episode 1 and working your way through, because you grow along with the team. You get to know all of our skills because we showcase them in each episode as we go, in each case that we take on, and then each case we learn something from that we carry over, and we'll reference past cases and episodes. So if you jump in, I would recommend everyone jumping in at the beginning and listening all the way through. But if you end up getting to the case that I think you're referencing, it's called The Demons That Haunt Us. And that was a very intense case that is, to date, I think the most emotional and impactful case we've done. And it's 4 parts long. It's the longest series we've ever featured.
Dope, man. I'm looking forward to checking that one out, dude. So, yeah. Well, Steven, man, this means a lot, dude. I love talking to you. I'm planning on putting this out a little bit closer to Halloween. But yeah, thank you again, man. And, you know, I got your number, dude. This is my cell phone number. So if you ever have one of your movie nights or you throw a party or something, man, let me know.
Yeah, for sure, man.
For sure, man. Well, best of luck to you, dude. And I'll talk to you later.
Okay, talk to you later.
Take care,
Bye.
man. See you.
Trapped in Austin podcast.